Day 3 of the June 97 7-day retreat in Springwater. The months and the years and the location of the retreats change. And yet, sitting here quietly at the beginning of a talk, isn't it the same quietness, the same stillness, openness, intactness? Wherever one may be. The birds sound different in different countries because they have different birds. Language is different. It may be warm or cold. But isn't the quiet always the same? I've been doing retreats now for some 20 years, but it's always the same stillness and intactness, here-ness, beingness. No matter what all changes in and around oneself. That's the beauty of going to retreat. Because in our daily life, in one way or another, each one lives in their own private world of dreams and fantasies, ideas. So many worlds as so many people. And so difficult to connect out of one's private, fantasized world with someone else's private, fantasized world. And yet, sitting quiet for a moment, truly quiet, unconcerned with the fantasized private life, full of its concepts, not just fantasies, ideas, words, names, memories. Sitting quietly here, what could possibly separate us? If this private world calms down, quiets down, loses its prevalent power for however long. The being here, the listening openly, presently, aware, is the same for all of us, even if we're deaf or blind. It doesn't matter. Beingness, here-ness, now-ness, presence does not depend on the sense organs, even though they can be very useful in conveying beauty of bird song, a whole spectrum of colors. But listening or awareing is the same whether the organs function well or have diminished functions. Also, I didn't say this right at the beginning of retreat. When I talk about listening, I don't exclude seeing or sensing, tasting, touching. Because in this openness, which we also call awareness, the senses are one perception, one awareness. They're not separated. Expressed beautifully in a Zen saying, seeing with your ears and hearing with your eyes. Or being all ears, all eyes. All of oneself, one listening, one awareing. A Danish mystic I read he got later on a Sanskrit name, Sunyata. And he uses this word awareing, and I like it. So I'm going to start taking it over. A publisher may say it doesn't exist and use a different word. But it doesn't matter. We can get used to words together. Because a noun always has a problem. Who has this awareness, people ask. Of course, you could also say, who is awareing? But awareing goes smoother, just like listening. Somebody asked, what is awareness? Yesterday, opening the... Let's listen to that sound. What is awareness? She opened the group meeting with that question. Is it something that can be taught? Is it something that can be practiced? Can it be learned? And if I learn it, can I teach it to someone else? I don't think it needs to be taught or learned because it is present. When the clouds part, the clouds of this personal, fantasized life of mine, world of mine, when that sort of opens up, disperses for a moment or for whatever length of time, then there's awareness. Because this constant self-referencing, what is it to me? How do I relate to it? Is it useful to me? Is it scary for me? I want it. I hate it. That is absent, that self-referential network of our personal life. When that's absent, there's no trick to awareness. It just is there. The world is there as it is. Airplanes and birds, flowers and hills and mountains and clouds. And all the people sitting or milling around are just there. This body just there. But no identification reference. It's mine, it's me. What do I represent? How do people see me? All of that, believe it or not, maybe you've experienced it yourself, can recede into the background or be totally absent. So, what is awareness? It's difficult to define things. I hate to be put in that position, but it happens all the time. It's this as the body is sweating and the breath is flowing, the words are pouring out. The light and darkness. No self-reference, no enclosure. No need to be good or fear of being bad. Because inevitably, because we are so constructed and conditioned, we want this thing because that seems to be the solution to our problems. our problems of relating with each other, and to ourselves. And it's all right to want something that sounds so good, so true, so real, and unpolluted. It's all right to want that, except that if it fills the mind obsessively, I want that, and it is an idea, a concept, then this is again part of the clouds of fantasy in this personal world of ours. Now there's added the cloud of awareness. So to begin to be sensitive, it's all right to want. Somebody told me this. I've been doing this for 20, 30 years, and the mind is quiet. It can quiet down very quickly now, but there's still this shadowy desire for enlightenment. And the response that came up was, let it be. Maybe this is what keeps us coming into quietness, into looking and listening, and self-reference dropping off. And maybe it all comes out of this desire for enlightenment or for freedom, for something other than the caught-upness in the private world of conflict. And yet to be discerning, sensitive to whether this is now an obsessive idea or whether it can just go. All right, the person says, no, it's there, it's still. Well, what is there really? Let's look at it. And that is something I wanted to talk about today too. Stepping out of the level of words and concepts and descriptions into looking, what do I really mean when I say there is this shadowy urge for enlightenment or freedom? Something must be there, or I wouldn't feel it and I wouldn't talk about it. And this is what awareness can ever clearly reveal, these quick thoughts of, well, you tell me, I don't have those thoughts. Thoughts of, I should have this thing that I've read about all my life, that's been the dream of my life. To get enlightenment, not to become somebody, that's not what I want, but to be enlightened, free, open, whole, complete, wise and compassionate. So track the thoughts and see them. Or a thought mood, a thought feeling may not all be words. It can be pictorial memories or ideational remembrances. See it flit by, and there comes the urge. And the thought may be arising out of the doubt. The doubt comes up. Is this all? Is this enough? Is this what the masters talked about? It can't be. This isn't good enough. And to see thought condensing in clouds, which become mood clouds, yearning clouds, or self-devaluation clouds. To see the whole specter as it unfolds from a fleeting thought. Talking about the abstract and the concrete. These are questions which people bring into a meeting. I remember a few. What is the relationship between the peace and quiet here and the noise in the world of my daily life? What's the relationship between this peace, quiet, and the noise out there? What is the relationship between being nobody here, which at times happens, and being somebody in the world? What's the relationship between that? Asks a person. Another person asks. What is the relationship between attachment and clinging on one side and commitment on the other? What's the relationship between those two things? Or somebody saying, yesterday you talked about feeling harmony and then a disturbance. Isn't disturbance, asks the questioner, isn't the disturbance also part of harmony? I've learned over the years why these questions are so hard to deal with. They're abstract. They most likely come out of thinking. Maybe not the experience of quiet, peace, and noise. There's some real concrete experience behind that. But then the brain setting in motion to try to find relationships. At least this is how the question comes out. Conceptualized, a relationship between attachment and commitment. Very difficult to deal with in this world here of being concretely in touch with oneself and each other. If one is. If we're not, then we're in our brain world, our conceptual world, and trying to make that click together, make sense, in which, I said it yesterday or the day before, there's nothing wrong with that. But to really investigate a question here, at this place, let us become concrete. And watch it. If the question has some ground in wanting to find out something, then watch peace and quiet and watch it, how the noise takes over. When the retreat is over, as one drives back home, family, work, just watch it also. You find out whether there is any relationship between quietness and noise. There is nothing that we cannot find out in this great matter if we are interested in it. And there is some energy to aware it. Peace and quiet here. And then something turbulent happening on the way home. Often people mention somebody cutting in front of one's car. Here and in Germany and in Holland, it is the same problem. The irate driver getting cut off. So what's the relationship? Maybe at this moment, no relationship at all. Flooded with irritation, anger chemicals, producing fantasy about cutting in front of that guy. Next time I have a chance, or driving into his trunk or something. So to beware of our posing abstract questions and bringing them back down into observation. This is what I also see as my function. To make the complicated more simple, which at times is hard work, because we're so used to and so comfortable in this abstract conceptual world. It's much easier to deal with. It needs different energy than the energy of stopping and looking directly. How is it really right now? Attachment and commitment. What do I really mean by commitment concretely? I have to examine it, explore it. And how does attachment manifest? And in watching both of these items that one brings up for comparison, for putting into relationship, in watching it all, one will find what the relationship is. The watching, the observing, the discovering, the questioning, the being intently and intensely quiet with the problem or the seeming problem. This morning when someone asked, isn't disturbance also part of harmony? Yes, theoretically, it is part of the grand scheme of wholeness. But I was being very concrete when I mentioned it. Walking along our back field with Kyle, with his 2 sticks, walking sticks. Got a little chair for him. If he gets tired, we put out the chair, he sits down. And I felt so good. Everything at this moment was in harmony, in order. The newsletter article had been delivered on time. The last meeting had been had in this off period. There'll be more meetings. For a moment, everything was. What do I mean by harmony? Yeah, I have to be more concrete. The mind was not challenged or demanded to investigate something, to concern itself with something, to clarify something, to go through something. It was truly for a moment on vacation, not needing to respond to specific scheduled requests, which is felt as this vacation, freedom, harmony, orderliness. These are one step removed from the direct experience. And then if something comes up, a new demand, a new problem, conveyed by the telephone or whichever way, over a letter, the mind goes to work again. It doesn't have to be resisting working, but it is not in the state of no work, no need to look at something. Do you see what I mean? Because theoretically you can say everything is part of the whole. And the disturbance, or this is how the question was put, does a disturbance become a disturbance because we call it such, call it so? It's a very good question. And there's truth in it. We think, oh, why should I be disturbed right now? I'm on vacation. Then it becomes a problem. I mean, a compounded problem. Not just needing to do something, but also resisting it because I'm on vacation. I shouldn't have to do this. And the story providing the feeding ground for irritation, resistance. Not necessary to call something a disturbance or to be aware of it. It's a trick, it's a trap. Something needs to be done, let's do it, let's go into it. Or else say, no, not right now, I'm on vacation. So, it's not that something coming up needs to necessarily be upsetting or annoying to disturb the vacation. Yesterday we talked almost the whole length of the talk about fear. But I didn't go into this matter of once fear has arisen or is sort of a steady companion because there are steady, disquieting thought shadows about what could happen, what I could have done wrong. Once this thing we call fear has arisen or is really consciously felt, what is our response to it? That's worth looking into. There's the thought shadow, memory shadow of what could happen to me. Lose my girlfriend, my husband. A war breaking out, or disease, whatever. And the body in full swing. Sometimes in subdued swing. It may already have learned over the years. If one is a chronically fearful person, body may have learned over the years to keep it subdued, repress it somewhat, maybe repress it completely through escape mechanisms, escape activities, which when they can't take place, for some reason the fear erupts, the fear of having to face what is being repressed, which is also fear. And that's what may happen coming to a retreat, where our extra habitual activities to distract us, reading, radio, television, and so forth, are not available or very much diminished. There may be a surfacing of what has been kept under cover. And the expression that comes to mind usually is this is fear, or this is anger, this is guilt, feelings, or whatever word one has learned to put to it. We have learned to put that word to it. I remember a woman coming to work with me years and years ago. She said, before I came here, I had to first learn to label what is jealousy, what is. I had no words for this. I was just in turmoil all the time. So we learn to label it, to give us a little bit more of a foothold on this thing. To know a little bit, this is what it is. Just as with any concept introduced, it is removed from the real thing and allows us to live in this world of removal, conceptual removal. And yet, one comes to retreat and says, I don't want to live with fear anymore. Can I be free of it? I don't know whether we can be free of fear, but I do know that we can meet it completely. Which means dismantling what prevents this direct meeting. The word, the concept, the knowing all about it, the knowing how it's going to get worse if I keep meditating, or whatever history one thinks one has had with it. It'll get worse under these or those conditions. To let go of all of those assumptions and knowings and be ready to plunge into this thing directly. Now this is subject to a lot of misunderstanding, which I want to prevent. It does not mean wallowing in this thing. It's a very fine, subtle line between wallowing in it, which again brings in thought, oh, I'm now one with this fear and it's going to be good for me, and how much I'm suffering, while it's none of that. It is, again, I have to come back to this. It's a no thing. It's no word, no escape. No removal, no resistance, nothing apart. with all of that gone, that's just what? That's just what is. And it can be touched. It is not dangerous to touch the body states manifested in this organism here. No danger in touching it. The danger lies in repressing it, escaping from it. Touching it, awareing it. I remember distinctly when this happened for me for the first time. I realized I'd never done this before. There was always something in between, some sort of tensing against it, supported by the idea it's dangerous to touch it, or I can't stand it, I can't survive it. That's all nonsense. It's not true. We believe the nonsense and get away from what's real and can be touched with no extra humdrum. It needs nothing extra. It's just what it is. And when it is touched in this totally direct way, it isn't what we thought it was. Will you try it? Does talking about it help? Can one teach this kind of witness, awareness? I don't know whether this can be taught, but it can be lived here, shown, demonstrated, although I'm not in fear right now, but this witness is there for anything and everything. Will it resonate? Will one try it because one has understood what is being said, at least intellectually, maybe more than intellectually. Before we end this, I wanted to say one more thing about the question, the perennial question, what will bring about more awareness? Because one realizes how helpful it is to be aware, in touch, clear. Well, first of all, there has to be the interest in it, the interest to find out beyond my entrenched opinions and ideas and occupation with the private world, attachment to the private world. There's great fear in all of us of this being rattled, of it being earthquaked apart. So the interest is necessary, the willingness to really go out on a limb, take a risk. The risk is in the mind. Being one with things is never a risk because it's the end of division. But also, over the years of doing this thing, because in my case it's holding retreats, meeting with people, talking, writing letters, really getting into stuff, something happens to this body-mind. It learns something. Not that I learn, the body learns to hold itself differently in awareness than in the engagement with the private world. These are different channels that function. And the body, it seems to me quite clear, can learn these new channels. of attending, awareing, being here, without instantly needing to be toppled over. And somebody says, when somebody attacks one or criticizes one. So there is something to sticking with doing this kind of thing. Retreating, meeting, having some quiet time. Question comes up a lot, usually at the end of retreat, and this retreat came up very early, how to maintain this peace and quiet when I get home into my hectic, over-busy, over-demanding life. It's already remarkable that somebody in a hectic, over-demanding life takes a week to come here. Many people wouldn't do it. Wouldn't think they could afford to do this. But then in one's daily life, will one find a little bit of time to stop, look, and listen quietly? Maybe not for an hour or 45 minutes or half an hour, 25 minutes. These things can bring up resistance. I don't have this time. I've got this and this and this and this to do. And then there are also the kids. There's so much. I don't take time for prolonged sitting outside of my own periods here. But there's a lot of time in a busy day to just hold it. Hold it. Be there. Disconnected and therefore totally connected. We will end here for today.